Hi everyone. This is Annaleta Nichols, and I will be talking today about St. Margaret of Antioch and the dragon. Before I start, one thing I'd like to say about the presentation, which will hopefully be helpful to you. On each slide, I will have a different painting or stained glass, and I've picked these intentionally to show either something narrative about St. Margaret's story, or to show a correlation or mirroring of Christ's story or one of his followers' stories. Without further ado, let's get started. St. Margaret of Antioch was one of the more popular saints during the Middle Ages. She was part of the 14 Holy Helpers and, more interestingly to us, she was counted as one of the voices Joan of Arc heard and promised to help women in the throes and fears of childbirth. Her story begins with her father in the 4th or 5th century in Antioch of modern-day Syria. Upon her birth, she was sent away to be raised by her nurse. When she was 15 years old, the provost of the city, Olybrius, saw her while riding past on his horse. Immediately taken with her beauty, he wanted to marry her. He had her brought to him, and upon meeting her, asked 3 questions. The first question was, "What is your lineage?" The second, "What is your name?" And the third, "What is your religion?" She replied, saying that she was of noble lineage, her name was Margaret, and she was a Christian. According to the Golden Legend, he replied, "The first 2 things are convenient to you, but the third appertains nothing to you that so fair a maid and so noble should worship a God crucified." She replied, "How do you know that Christ was crucified?" He said, "By the books of Christian men." She then replied remarkably, "Oh, what shame it is to you when you read the pain of Christ and the glory and believe one thing and deny the other." She then witnessed to him, which made him so mad that he put her in prison. The next day he took her to a trial and threatened her with torture if she did not recant, which of course, as our holy heroine, she did not. Instead, she replied, "Christ gave himself over to death for me, and I gladly desire to die for Christ." He had her beaten, cut, and then strung up before the city and tormented. Then he shut her back in prison. This is where the dragon comes in. While in prison, she asked God to reveal the fiend who had been tormenting her, and she wanted to see him in the flesh. Immediately, a disgusting dragon appeared and swallowed her whole, although this dragon appears to be eating her dress. However, the crucifix she held while she was being swallowed split the dragon in 2 from within, and she emerged unhurt. Next, the fiend became a man and attempted to tempt her by telling her she had done her duty and should rest. In response, she threw the devil down head first and put her foot on his neck, saying, "Lie still, you fiend, under the foot of a woman." The next day, she was again taken to trial, again refused to recant, tortured, and eventually beheaded, joined with Christ in glory. All right, what is this dragon? Are we to reject this story because we can't believe that an actual dragon appeared to her? That depends entirely on your understanding of what a dragon means. So I want to talk a bit about how we can understand this dragon in a helpful way and possibly change our hermeneutic for understanding this dragon to allow us to better see her story as that of Christ's. First thing we need to know is that dragons belong in the realm of myth, and we live solidly in an age of history. To get to the bottom of the meaning of a dragon and to change our hermeneutic from history to myth, we have to believe that, as W. Taylor Stevenson says, myth can be taken in all seriousness, be recognized as an important source of truth, and even be accepted as articulating for an individual or community an ultimate worldview or faith stance. Biblical myth, then, Miller states, serves not mainly to communicate information to engage us, it does not communicate elements of faith as much as it embodies the faith. So our hermeneutic should shift to look at more what a dragon means rather than if there was actually a dragon. Therefore, instead of asking if the dragon was really a dragon, we need to ask what it means. In ancient cultures, including but not limited to ancient Judaism and Christianity, dragons represented the real, formidable, powerful, and holy other, holy as in W-H-O-L-L-Y, other, or uncanny evil that is active in this world. It represents chaos, evil, deception. It makes sense, then, that when Christians chose to portray Satan, they often portrayed him as a dragon, or with dragon-like features. In fact, this is true from the very beginning of our faith. The Bible is bookended with dragons. In Genesis, we learn that the dragon is a formidable enemy because the serpent wins the first battle. It is able to deceive Eve and Adam. But in Revelations 12, we see that the great dragon was hurled down, that great serpent called Satan, who would lead the whole world astray. And in the end, he is vanquished. In fact, this defeat was foretold in Genesis. Genesis 3:15 foretells that while the serpent will bruise the heel, even her descendants will crush his head. So this brings us back to Margaret of Antioch. By asking to fight the fiend in the flesh, to actually see the evil, she asks to see the dragon, see the evil for what it actually is. As T.S. Eliot says, the dragon is evil which has no power to attract us, for we see it as the repulsive thing that it is. Secondly, by being swallowed by the dragon, she mimics Christ's descent into hell and then his resurrection. She was fully consumed by the evil, not fighting it at all by her own power. But it was the cross that triumphantly brings her back up from eternal disorder and despair. Finally, her promise to be with the mothers in childbirth is not a random one-off promise. It is actually linked to the dragon. Recall the woman in the wilderness of Revelations crying out in childbirth. Who waits for her? A dragon is waiting to consume her children as they are born in Revelations 13. But at the same time, we remember the promise God made to Eve in Genesis. The serpent will bruise your heel, but you and your descendants will step on its head. So Margaret, with her promise to be with women in childbirth, with her vanquishing of the dragon through the use of the crucifix, is a beautiful image of the woman of Revelations vanquishing the serpent. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.